tonight, and he realizes that at next week's study session, his answers will come up. But there's just some preliminary information he'd like to get across to us now. Mr. Jones, if you would give us name and address again, and then you have 3 minutes.
Bill Jones, 7093 Jasmine Street. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to give you a picture. Just take a good look at that.
And can I pass this down? Is that okay?
I would appreciate it if you would.
Okay.
That is currently the view I have out of my back door. That's what I had for Thanksgiving. That's what I had for Christmas. That's what I had for New Year's. I have guests, and that's what my guests saw as well. I'm not very happy about it, and so I'm going to read a little bit. Landscaping. This is 21-32 of the Commerce City Code. Intent. The intent of this section is to ensure that landscaping is installed so that it contributes to the visual character and community within and between developments, provides visual screening between different land uses, provides noise mitigation, reduces erosion and runoff, and enhances the pedestrian, bicycle, and automobile environment. Now, number 10 in that code says buffering incompatible land uses. If the development plan or building design does not adequately mitigate conflicts between dissimilar uses and buildings, one or more of the following buffer techniques may be used to mitigate the conflict. That clearly states that I should have some kind of buffering between my residential property and the business, as well as Section 21-271, which is very clear. Now, I had a meeting with Mr. Tom Aker a week or so ago, and Mr. Aker was willing to put in the trees, the grass, the whole entire buffer area, if I was willing to sign an affidavit stating that I wouldn't sue the city and or make any more complaints to 911. I've called 911 over 200 times in 2007 for the problems with that business. And yet, council still and staff thinks that this is an option to enforce this. I would like an answer to this question.
I'm not chairing any council, but again, we will be speaking about this at the study session next week. I've been assured that whatever questions you may have will be answered at that time. That staff had advised that they would be back to you in January, and we do have a date, and it is on our agenda. Is that correct, Mr. Clark?
That's correct.
I would like to know why King Concrete is being called in to have a meeting with Mr. Flannery to get their approval for the code enforcement.
Okay, and again, this will be done at next week's meeting.
Mr. Mayor, if I could address that. Mr. Jones knows full well why I'm meeting with King Concrete, because I met with him for over an hour today. I don't quite understand the comment, because one of the things that I want to do, and I'm meeting with King Concrete on Wednesday, is to discuss what issues they have on their property that the city needs to have rectified. And so we're meeting with them to talk to them. This is obviously a position that we are playing mediator in that typically we don't typically do. You talk about going over and above the call of duty. Well, I know that this has been an issue that's going on, but without some clarity, which is what I think I finally got today, and I want to thank Mr. Jones for being reasonable in his demeanor and discussing it with me, is that we have looked at this area and we've spent numerous hours in staff time and money to investigate this, and my involvement at this point is, I think, warrants the recognition of the fact that we are actually having me going down and meeting with this business on behalf of the council and the city to actually try to rectify this situation. So we will be coming back to you with a report of the issues that Mr. Jones brought up to staff over a month ago, and we do have a report to put together on that. But regardless of that, I am meeting with King Concrete to try to get together, and there's a third meeting that needs to be mentioned that I also mentioned today in my meeting with Mr. Jones, was that he and I and King Concrete hopefully we'll get together next week to have a further discussion on this matter. So, thank you.
I'm still confused as to why there needs to be a discussion with Keene Concrete when the law is sitting right here. It's your own law book. You have written the laws. There is no option for enforcement. Either you're going to enforce it or you're not. And all I want to know is whether it's going to be enforced.
Okay, we will probably be able to have an answer for you on this next week at our meeting. And this will be the topic.
And as your staff has stated, they've spent numerous hours and numerous money. Well, I've been going at this for 7 years, not with Keene Concrete, but with the city over the same subject for 7 years. I think my time and my money are worth just as much as the city's is. And every night that I'm here in a council meeting, I'm losing over $500 a night to be here from my job.
Okay, and no one is countering anything you're saying, sir. It's that we have set a special meeting just for this. Well, not a special meeting. You'll be part of our regular meeting.
Well, I just want to be clear that the city isn't the only one expending time and energy towards this. I've been dealing with this for 7 years, and the staff seems to think it's a joke.
And Mr. Jones, I fully understand what you're saying. I do. But I don't think anyone is saying that you have not expended any energy on this. But what we're saying is we're trying to bring this together. This would ordinarily be a civil matter between the two of you. We are trying to work with this, and we have placed time at next week's meeting to do this.
I don't see how failure to enforce the code is a civil matter. That is a city matter. That has to do with your police department and your code enforcement.
I think you're going to be able to get that answer next week. Let me go to Mr. McElvany.
Mr. Jones? Mr. Jones, I'm confused. You have taken considerable time to make us aware of your concern, and I think council has responded by making clear to you and to staff that we want to see something come of this. I think, if I may, I think that Mr. Flannery and his staff have done an exceptional job of trying to help mediate this matter. My concern, based on your comments tonight, is that you want an answer right now.
Well, the fact is, it's been going on 7 years.
If it's been going on 7 years, and it's finally getting the attention that it deserves, are you serving your interests by
being loud and obnoxious right now? I apologize, but I'm frustrated.
I understand, sir, but I would ask that you have patience for 1 more week and give the staff the chance to come back to you next week at the meeting that's been promised.
Mr.
With the update that's been promised.
I wouldn't be here if Keene Concrete wasn't, I was under the impression that they were under a cease and desist until this meeting took place, this council meeting took place on the 14th. But they continued to operate and do the exact same things, and in more fashion, every time they know I come to the city or make a phone call, the harassment gets worse.
I don't think we're going to settle this tonight.
I don't expect it to get settled tonight. I do expect you to listen and be somewhat apprised of what's going on. I'm not just standing here being anal about it. Mr. Akers sat there and said, well, we'll do this if you sign your rights away.
Yes, Mr. Jones, this is going to be for next week. I still have 2 council members who'd like to speak. Mr. Benson?
Yes, thank you for being here tonight, Mr. Jones. I would address this to the city manager. I guess the purpose of meeting with Keene Concrete is to mediate and to try to work out some voluntary action on their part, which might put them in compliance with our ordinances. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, sir.
All right, and that's good. And I'm hoping that if they don't work out that voluntary compliance, that the city is going to do something to enforce the ordinances that are on the books. That's all I have to say.
Mr. Turner?
Mr. Flannery, is there a cease and desist order for Keene Concrete?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember, Mayor John Droder, not that I'm aware of. Staff.
So it never went out as it was supposed to.
And I don't know where that would come from, Mr. Jones, is the only thing that I don't.
I was unaware of that discussion.
Well, my point is that I'm frustrated. I'm asking for help. I've been asking for help, and after my conversation with Mr. Flannery today, it appeared to be productive.
Good.
But it still appears that the staff underneath him is reluctant to enforce, and that's all I'm
And
trying to
that's
say.
what we're going to talk about next week, and we're just not going to accomplish anything here. I appreciate you coming in tonight. We will deal with this in a full meeting next Monday. Thank you.
And I do want to make one more quick
Yes.
statement. If Toby Mays had not called me on, I believe it was Tuesday morning, I would not have been angry enough to be here today, or maybe it was last Friday when he called, but I wouldn't most likely be here tonight. I don't ever want that man on the end of my phone again, ever.
Okay, I'm
I
sorry.
thought I made that
I'm sorry you feel that way. Mr. Mays has been one of our best employees, so. But thank you for coming in tonight, and we will deal with this next week.
I
Thank you.
appreciate your time, and I
Okay.
apologize for my anger.
Okay, thank you, sir.